My loose best friend slept with my crush and got an STD. When I laughed at her, she served me with a lawsuit. Sienna was the kind of girl who treated my life like a buffet she had unlimited access to. If I bought a new lipstick, she borrowed it without asking and forgot to return it for 3 months. If I got a new job, she somehow ended up at the office happy hour. If I started a new hobby, she suddenly took it up with more enthusiasm than I ever had. She had been my best friend since we were 11, and by the time we were both 24, I had spent more than half my life letting her treat me this way. The crush thing started in college. I had been talking about a guy in my chemistry class for almost a month, and the second I introduced him to Sienna at a study group, she sat in his lap by the end of the night. He asked her out the next day. When I confronted her, she told me I had never officially called dibs, and he obviously preferred her anyway. We did not speak for 3 weeks. Then she showed up at my apartment crying because she had been dumped, and I let her back in like an idiot. It happened 3 more times over the next 4 years. There was Trey, who I had been seeing for 2 months before Sienna started running into him at coffee shops, always by accident, always happy to see him. There was Dominic, who Sienna offered to pick up from the airport for me, and ended up at his place for 2 days. Every time she had a reason. Every time the reason made it sound like I was being possessive about men who never belonged to me anyway. Then I met Adrian. Adrian came from money, drove a car that cost more than my yearly rent, and had a way of making everyone in a room feel like he was talking only to them. I had been into him for almost 6 months before he finally asked me out. We went on 4 dates over 3 weeks, and I genuinely thought something real was starting. I told Sienna nothing about him. I did not show her his pictures, did not say his name at brunch, did not even mention that I was seeing anyone new. She found out anyway. Adrian had a Halloween party, and one of our shared friends invited Sienna without asking me. I walked in and saw her already laughing at something he was saying, with her hand on his forearm. I left after 20 minutes. By Tuesday, Adrian had stopped responding to my messages. By Friday, Sienna had posted a picture of the two of them at brunch on her private account. I called her immediately. She told me she was done apologizing for things outside her control, and that maybe I should consider why men kept choosing her over me. I was done. I told 2 of our mutual friends what had happened, and one of them mentioned that she had heard from her cousin that Adrian had a reputation for sleeping with multiple women at once and not being honest about it. I told another friend. I told my coworker at lunch. I was not careful about who I told because I was angry and because I wanted to expose Sienna's behavior in whatever way I could. 3 weeks after that, she called me at 11 at night, sobbing. She had been to a clinic that morning. The test came back positive for chlamydia. She was sure she had gotten it from Adrian because he was the only person she had been with in months. She wanted to know what I was going to do about it. I asked her what she expected me to do about it. She said I should have warned her since I had clearly known what kind of person he was, and that I had let her walk into this on purpose because I was bitter about him picking her. I started laughing. I could not help it. I laughed until I had to sit down on the floor. She hung up on me. 3 weeks later, I got served. Sienna was suing me for intentional infliction of emotional distress. The complaint was 11 pages long. It said I had known about Adrian's sexual history, had deliberately withheld that information to harm her, and had mocked her diagnosis over the phone. The amount she was asking for was $2 million. I read the number on those papers so many times the ink should have worn off. My first instinct was to call Sienna and beg her to stop, and I hated myself for that instinct. Instead, I called Martha, who had watched Sienna pull this routine for years. Martha answered on the second ring and said, "Please tell me you are not about to give in to her." Then she said, "Sienna has been calling people all week telling everyone you deliberately put her in danger. She is building a story, and you need to build yours faster." That meant I needed people who could tell the truth about what she had been doing to me for 13 years. The first call I made was to Adeline, a friend from work who had connections in the legal world. She listened to everything and said she knew someone who could help. 2 days later, I was sitting across from the attorney Adeline had recommended. I handed him the complaint and watched his face while he read it. He read all 11 pages, put them down, and looked at me. Emotional distress cases are hard to win, but they are not impossible, and whoever wrote this complaint did a decent job. A judge is not going to throw it out on the first look. I felt the floor tilt under me. I had walked in expecting him to tell me it was a joke. Instead, he was telling me this thing had legs. That night, Martha called me. Her voice was tight, the way it gets when she is trying to stay calm, but is actually really upset. She said, "2 of our friends have already picked Sienna's side." I asked which ones. She told me. One of them was a girl from our college friend group, someone I had known almost as long as I had known Sienna. Martha said this girl had sent me a text, and I should check my phone. I opened my messages, and there it was. A long paragraph from someone I thought was my friend. It said, "I think what you did was really messed up. You knew he was dirty, and you let her walk into it. That is not what friends do." I read it 3 times. Each time it hit harder. The truth was complicated, and Sienna's lie was simple. Simple wins when people do not want to think too hard. The other friend had not sent a message, but had removed me from a group chat without a word. 2 people gone within a week. I reached out to Trey and Dominic, hoping they would back up Sienna's pattern. Trey never responded. Dominic wrote back, "I do not want to get involved in whatever this is. Sorry." That was it. The people who had been there for the worst of what Sienna did to me either did not care or did not want the trouble. Then Martha called again, and what she told me made everything worse. Sienna had been telling people that during that late-night phone call, I had admitted I knew about Adrian's history, and chose to say nothing. Sienna was saying I basically confessed. I felt cold all over. I went through every word I remembered saying, every pause, every reaction. I never said I knew about Adrian's health, but I did laugh. I laughed hard, and I laughed for a long time. And if you were Sienna sitting on the other end of that call, you could absolutely twist that into something that sounded like satisfaction. I never said those words, but my laughter said something close enough for Sienna to build a story around it. And now that story was the one a judge might hear. On the 3rd night, I did something I am not proud of. I sat on my bed with my laptop open and typed "how to settle a lawsuit quietly" into the search bar. I started doing the math. If I offered Sienna something small, maybe she would take it and go away. Maybe I could buy my way out of the worst friendship of my life. Then my phone rang. Martha. She must have had some kind of radar for when I was about to do something stupid, because the first thing she said was, "If you pay her a single dollar, she will own you for the rest of your life. Sienna does not want justice. She wants control. The second you hand her a check, you are telling her that all All she has to do is threaten you, and you will fold. She will come back. She will always come back. I closed my laptop. I was not giving her $1. I was not giving her an apology. She wanted a courtroom. Fine. Adeline made 2 phone calls and set me up with a different attorney. One she described as sharp and not easily impressed. He read the complaint and looked almost bored. He took the case on contingency because in his opinion the whole thing was frivolous. He told me the key weakness in Sienna's case was the claim that I knew about Adrian's sexual history. He looked me in the face and asked, "Did you know he had an STD before she slept with him?" I said no. I told him I had heard through a mutual friend's cousin that Adrian had a reputation for sleeping around. That was it. I never heard anything about a diagnosis. The attorney leaned forward. That is a massive difference. Sleeping around is not a medical condition. She is conflating gossip with medical knowledge, and we can break that apart. Then Sienna escalated. My attorney called me on a Wednesday morning and told me Sienna had filed an amended complaint adding defamation. According to the new filing, I had told multiple people that Adrian gave Sienna an STD, and Sienna was claiming this counted as spreading her private medical information. He said, "This is her trying to bury you in legal costs. She wants you to give up, not win." The defamation claim was not completely made up. I had told people about Sienna and Adrian. I told co-workers. I told mutual friends. I had not been careful, and now Sienna was using that against me. My attorney sat me down the next day and asked me one question that mattered more than anything else. "When you talked to these people, did you tell them Sienna had an STD?" I went back through every conversation. The answer was no. I did not tell anyone about an STD because I did not know about any STD. Sienna did not call me crying about the diagnosis until weeks after I had already been venting. When I was telling people, all I knew was that Sienna had gone after Adrian behind my back, just that she had stolen another one of my guys. My attorney nodded. "You did not spread her medical information because you did not have it at that time, but we need to prove the timeline, and we need witnesses who will confirm what you actually said versus what Sienna claims you said." That is when I called Queenie. Queenie and I had been friends since college, and she had been there for several of the conversations where I had vented about Sienna and Adrian. She had heard me rant in person, at lunch, on the phone. I called her and explained what was happening. She was quiet for a second, and then she said, "You literally just said she took another one of your guys. That is all you ever said. You were upset, not spreading medical records?" Queenie said she would put it in writing. 2 days after the defamation claim was filed, Martha told me Sienna had created a group chat with 6 of our mutual friends. She titled it Support. 2 more friends stopped talking to me after that. Martha did something I will always be grateful for. She took screenshots of everything Sienna was writing and sent them to me. Most of it was the usual dramatic victim language, but one message stopped me cold. Sienna had written, "She wanted me to get sick. She sat on the information because she hated that Adrian picked me." I read it 3 times. The fact that anyone could read that and believe it made me want to throw my phone across the room. I forwarded every screenshot to my attorney. He read them while I was still on the phone, and when he was done, his voice sounded almost calm. "She is writing our cross-examination for us. Every lie she puts in writing is something we can confront her with under oath." My attorney told me to save everything and keep my mouth shut. Let her talk. The more she says, the more rope she gives us. That night, sitting alone in my apartment at almost 1 in the morning, I broke down. I called Martha. What if the judge believes her? What if he looks at me and thinks I deserve this? Martha did not even hesitate. "You laughed at a girl who stole every guy you ever liked and then blamed you for the consequences. That does not make you a villain. That makes you human. Now stop crying and go win this." Adrian was a wild card. Martha had told me Sienna was reaching out to him for a supporting statement, so I sent him a message. I kept it simple. "Sienna is suing me for $2 million because I did not warn her about you. I need to know if you are planning to help her." He responded in under an hour. "She told me you were the one who gave her my number. I never even knew you two were friends." I read the message 4 times. Sienna had told Adrian I had set them up. That was a lie. We met for coffee 2 days later. When Adrian walked in, he looked tired, like someone who had been dealing with things he did not sign up for. He sat down across from me and did not waste time. "Sienna told me you set the whole thing up. She said you wanted us to meet because you thought we would be a good match. I had no idea you were into me." I just stared at him for a second. Sienna had completely rewritten the story so that I was the matchmaker. I told Adrian everything. The 6 months I had spent liking him before he asked me out. The 4 dates. The Halloween party. I had never given Sienna his number. I had never told her about him. Adrian's face changed while I talked. He went from confused to something closer to angry. Not at me. At Sienna. He said he wanted nothing to do with her lawsuit. He said she had lied to him from the beginning, and he was not going to help her lie to a judge too. I asked if he would put it in writing. He looked down at his coffee and then back at me and said, "Let me think about it." I went back through every conversation I ever had with Sienna about every guy she took from me. I checked old voicemails I had saved on my phone, the ones I kept because part of me knew I might need proof someday. That is when I found it. A voicemail from 2 years ago, right after the thing with Trey, where Sienna said, "You cannot be mad at me for being prettier than you. That is just biology." I played it for my attorney the next day, and he actually put his pen down and stared at me for a long second. Then he told me that voicemail alone showed a pattern of deliberate cruelty. About 10 days before the hearing, my attorney called and told me Sienna's side had sent over a settlement letter. Sienna was offering to drop both claims if I agreed to 2 things. First, I had to pay her $50,000. Second, I had to sign a public apology admitting I had acted in a way that caused her harm. $50,000 and a signed confession. The apology was not really an apology. It was a document she could hold over me forever. I did not even have to think about it. Tell her no. I could hear the smile in my attorney's voice when he said, "I was hoping you would say that." The night before the hearing, Adrian's signed statement came through. He confirmed Sienna had told him I set them up. Then my phone rang. A number I did not recognize, but the contact name was Azariah. I had not talked to Azariah in 3 years. We knew each other from college. He got straight to the point. I heard about the lawsuit. She did the same thing to my ex. She went after the guy my ex was seeing and then blamed my ex when it blew up. If you need me to say that to someone official, I will. I sat there with my mouth open. Sienna's pattern was not just something she did to me. It was something she did to everyone. I asked if I could pass his information to my attorney. He said yes without hesitating. After I hung up, I sat there for a long time. I was not angry. I was not scared. I felt something I had not felt in months. And the only word I can use to describe it is calm. The real kind. I called Martha and said, I am ready. She said, go end this. I slept better that night than I had in weeks. I woke up early, picked out a blazer, and picked up the folder from the counter. The drive was quiet. Sienna was sitting on a bench near the courtroom door with her attorney. When she saw me for the first time in 13 years of friendship, she did not smirk. She looked nervous. Her eyes moved from my face to the folder in my hand and back. I did not say a word. I walked past her, sat down across the hallway, set my folder on my lap, and opened it. I did not look up. I did not need to. I could feel her watching me, and that was enough. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. The judge was already seated. Gray hair, reading glasses, the look of a man who had heard 1,000 cases more interesting than ours. Sienna's attorney went first. He stood up and spoke in a voice that was smooth and practiced. He told the judge that his client had suffered severe and ongoing emotional distress. He said I had specific knowledge of Adrian's sexual health status and had deliberately withheld it. He said the word laughed like it was a weapon. He said I had displayed a callous disregard for the plaintiff's suffering. The judge listened without expression. He did not nod. He did not frown. He just watched the way you watch someone finish a presentation you have already made up your mind about but are too polite to interrupt. My attorney sat next to me completely still. He did not object. He did not scribble notes. He just let them lay out every dramatic word they had prepared. When Sienna's attorney finally sat down, the judge looked at our side and nodded. My attorney stood up, buttoned his jacket, and turned towards Sienna. How did you and Adrian meet? Sienna blinked. She looked at her attorney, who gave her a small nod. We met through a mutual friend at a Halloween party. Did you tell Adrian that my client set the two of you up? That she wanted you to meet him because she thought you would be a good couple? Sienna did not answer right away. I watched her mouth open slightly and then close. The pause lasted maybe 3 seconds, but it felt like 30. My attorney did not wait. He picked up Adrian's signed statement from the table and read it out loud. Sienna had told Adrian I had given her his number. Sienna had told Adrian I had arranged their introduction. Adrian had no idea I was interested in him, because Sienna had made it sound like the whole thing was my idea. When my attorney finished reading, Sienna's face changed. The composure she walked in with cracked right down the middle. She said, that is not exactly what I said. My attorney looked at her, then at the judge, and read Adrian's exact words one more time, slowly. The judge wrote something on the pad in front of him without looking up. My attorney walked the judge through the timeline next, showing the rumor about Adrian's behavior reached me weeks after Sienna and Adrian had already started seeing each other. He held up the time-stamped texts. My client did not withhold a warning. She did not have the information to give, and even if she had, knowing someone sleeps around is not the same as knowing someone has a communicable disease. The plaintiff is asking this court to hold my client liable for medical information she never possessed. The judge nodded slowly, first real reaction of the hearing. Then my attorney opened the folder wider. He read Sienna's group chat messages out loud to the courtroom. She wanted me to get sick. Pause. She sat on the information because she hated that Adrian picked me. The words sounded different in a courtroom than they had in Sienna's head. He played the voicemail. Sienna's voice filled the room, casual and light, saying, you cannot be mad at me for being prettier than you. That is just biology. The judge's eyebrows moved, just barely, but I saw it. Then my attorney pulled out the 4-year-old text where Sienna joked about Trey being easy to steal. He presented Queenie's written statement, confirming that during every conversation she witnessed, I only ever talked about Sienna going after my guys and never once mentioned an STD or any kind of diagnosis. He presented Azariah's statement, confirming that Sienna had done the same exact thing to another woman in a completely separate situation. My attorney stood in the middle of the courtroom and said, Your Honor, the plaintiff has a 13-year pattern of pursuing the romantic interests of the people closest to her. When the consequences of that pattern finally caught up with her, she chose to blame the one person who had the least to do with it. The judge turned to Sienna. He looked at her directly. Did you pursue a romantic relationship with a man you knew your best friend was interested in? Sienna sat up straighter. He came to me. I did not go to him. The judge did not blink. That is not what I asked. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I have ever heard. Her attorney leaned over and whispered something I could not make out. Sienna swallowed. She looked down at the table and said, I did not think it was that serious between them. The judge looked at her for a long moment, the kind of look that does not need words. Then he turned back to face both attorneys. He said the emotional distress claim lacked the required element of outrageous conduct. He said the defamation claim failed because the plaintiff had not demonstrated that false statements of fact were made. He said the plaintiff's own communications, the group chat messages, the voicemail, the text about Trey, all of it undermined her credibility as a witness in her own case. He dismissed the entire lawsuit with prejudice. Sienna could never file it again. Then he said something I did not see coming. He turned to Sienna's attorney and told him that filing a complaint of this nature, with this evidentiary basis, could be considered sanctionable. He said he was referring the matter for review. Sienna's attorney went pale. The kind of pale where you realize your client was not honest with you. Sienna started crying. Not the loud dramatic crying she used to do on my couch when she wanted sympathy. This was different. This was quiet, shaking. The kind of crying you do when you realize nobody in the room is going to feel sorry for you. I stood up. I closed my folder. I pushed my chair back, and I walked out of the courtroom without looking at her. Martha was waiting in the hallway. She stood the second I came through. Her face was tight, like she was holding her breath. She said, well, I looked at her and said, it is over. I could still hear Sienna crying through the door. I did not go back in. I walked to my car, drove home, and deleted her number.